England against Fiji this weekend, folks. Final round of Rugby World Cup warm-up games is about to get underway. We are going to go through the two lineups which have been picked by coaches Borthwick and Raiwalui respectively. Some stats, some recent history predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Obviously, this is World Cup warm-up games. Final round, so we just knock on wood that nobody gets injured. It's probably going to happen. We've seen guys pull out of the squads. But yeah, hopefully we get through this one with minimal disruption in terms of injuries and suspensions. But yes, recent history between Fiji and England is not actually that recent. If I'm not mistaken, the last time they have played is 2016, which is a wee while ago now. And if you're going back to the last 5 fixtures between these sides, you head back to 1991 when I was still a young primary school lad when England toured Fiji. Well, as part of a tour of Australia, they went to Suva. That feels like it's ancient history by this point. But yeah, Fiji's never managed to beat England, but you got to feel like in terms of the current standings of the sides, this is about as close as they've probably ever been. Fiji's ranked 9th, coming off a big Pacific Nations Cup win where they pretty handily dispatched Tonga, Samoa, and then Japan in Japan. Lost to France last week, but then England lost to Wales. Determined, hard kind of fought comeback win over Wales in their second game. And then disappointing loss to Ireland last week. That talk of that Wales-England game sent that bird flying. But yeah, as I said, kind of England's not in the hottest spot at the moment. But who knows? Maybe this is the game to see them turn it around. Or maybe send it to an all-new low. We will kind of have to wait and see. For England, they have had to make some changes. Some of them are injury-related, some of them are suspension. Obviously, Billy V copped a ban. Owen Farrell's been banned, so those two guys are not available for this one. George Martin's still coming back from injury, likewise Henry Arundel and Elliot Daly. And bad news for Watson is his injury is going to keep him out of the World Cup. So feel for him. He is another name to the list of guys who are going to miss the World Cup, sadly. But it's an opportunity for some other guys. So Ellis, Genge, Theo, Dan, and Dan Cole. That's your front row. My wishes have been answered, and that Jamie George is not starting a game for England. Not that I have anything against Jamie George, but he hogs all the game time and somebody else needs a turn. So Theo, Dan getting a start is phenomenal news. Dan Cole, experienced guy beside him. And then Ellis, Genge, who was great. In his game last week, 4 carries, 4 defenders beaten. That's a pretty good return on investment. We look to see more of that from him. Maro, Itoje, and Ollie Chessum in the second row. So Chessum comes up from the bench. Maro is still, kind of keeping on in his regular position. Quite haven't really been able to see him get over the ball as much as we are used to. But he will certainly be trying to disrupt the Fijian guys at the breakdown. And Chessum is a big unit in the second row alongside him. Courtney Laws will captain the side in what is, I believe, his 100th appearance for England. So big congratulations to him. That's a massive achievement. Likewise, he'll be looking to disrupt line-out ball and get involved in the breakdown too. One of the best defensive players in any side, but especially for the singles side. Jack Willis, tackling machine, comes up from the bench with Billy V suspended. It sees Ben Earl move to number 8. I mean, Ben Earl made 12 from 14 tackles in their game last week as well, so he's also been a bit of a workhorse. I'm not as familiar with him at number 8. Certainly a different style of player from Billy V. We'll see how much go-forward ball he can get, but Steve Borthwick did mention in the press conference, he's played a bit of his rugby for his club there, so we'll see how he goes. Alex Mitchell, lively guy, number 9, with Van Portfleet out of the World Cup, another one of the guys on that long list. Alex Mitchell's in, I believe, so that's a bit of good news because I like the way Alex Mitchell's able to kind of keep defenses guessing with some kind of, snappy, quick play, which is not really what you think of when you think of this current England crop, but maybe Alex Mitchell's the guy to light a bit of a fuse in that regard alongside George Ford at number 10. Tuilagi and Lawrence is 12 and 13. That's a big midfield, but the Fijian midfield's pretty big in itself. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how much kind of direct ball carrying we get from those two guys. And then Johnny May, who's not in the World Cup 33, is on the left wing, but he has been training with the squad. And Max Malins is on the right wing. So both of those guys come into the 23 who didn't play last week. Freddie Steward continues at the back. Got 79 metres last week. Good under the high ball. Maybe a little bit too easily stepped on defence, but if your things are getting to your last man on defence, there's usually been some kind of systemic failure in the build-up to that move, but still, it'd be nice to see him just make one of those classic fullbacks try-saving tackles when it looks like he's beaten all ends up. Replacements, Jack Walker's returned from injury, so there is no sign of Jamie George in the lineup whatsoever. Joe Marler and Will Stewart are your prop replacements. Dave Ribbans is down to the bench. Lewis Ludlam is there. Speaking of kind of high work rate guys, and he's versatile enough to play anywhere in the back row. Danny Kerr, the veteran. Marcus Smith there as well, and then Joe Marchant also drops to the bench. So like I said, a few suspensions, a few injuries, and a few changes for the England squad. But I don't know. I am for some reason positive about how this squad might go. I feel like the injection of Alex Mitchell, Theo Dan being there, who's been kind of a lively ball carrier, we might see something else from this England squad. Some direct carries in the midfield would be pleasing. For Fiji, they have made changes again. Every game this campaign, Simon Rawalui has made the changes. Not one game has he kind of just kept the same 15. It's always tinkering, and also giving guys a bit of game time. Maui, Matavesi, and Tangi are your front row, so a couple of those guys will be pretty familiar to English rugby's premiership fans. Matavesi is up from the bench in place of Ikanaveri. He'll have to try and kind of bring a bit of Ikanaveri's 5 meter out kind of devastating ball carries from close range, because that's something the Fijians have been pretty good at doing under Simon Rawalui. We'll see if they're able to replicate that. Nasilasila and Thirikitaveta are the same guys in the second row. Nasilasila didn't get that much talk in the game last week, but was just quietly making 11 from 13 tackles. So one of the Fijians' top tacklers, I think, behind Botia, who is not in the squad this week. England fans may be breathing a bit of a sigh of relief that guy is not there with his threat at the breakdown. But Nasilasila certainly been really good for Fiji and the Drua in Super Rugby this year. Tuisui, Takitikivalu, and Mata are the back row. So Mata continues on. He had a whopping 20 carries at the back last week, so he continues on. And then Tuisui is a big unit in himself. So yeah, there's certainly some big carries in this Fijian back row. Their battle up against the English guys is going to be certainly a pretty fascinating one. Backs-wise is maybe where the Fijians would get a little bit more of the kind of headlines. It's Lamani and Muntz who continue on at 9 and 10. Hopefully Lamani can kind of add a bit more snappy service, because you feel like it was a little bit off the pace last week against France. Muntz, despite the fact that I never considered him that much of an individual kind of threat ball carrier, managed to bust 8 tackles last week against France, which was pretty incredible. So maybe we can see more of that from him. But then Radradra and Nayacalevu is certainly one of the best midfield combinations at any team in World Rugby. Radradra, again, English fans will be familiar with him with the Premiership and just international rugby. Scored a great try against France as well. And maybe he's coming into a bit of form, because when I've seen him for Bristol over the last, I want to say 18 months, he doesn't seem to have quite been, didn't he have an injury a while back and didn't quite seem to be at that same level, but he's one of the guys who seems to be maybe peaking at just the right time. And Nayacalevu, in terms of his offloading game and just if you give him any space, is going to break hearts. So yeah, England's midfield will certainly have to be very careful with those two guys, world-class operators. And then one of the guys who's maybe less familiar to people who haven't seen Super Rugby or Fiji play, the right winger, Selesitino Ravutaumada. Oh my goodness, he has taken to international rugby like a duck to water. He has just been able to find space. He's got genuine gas, and he just seems to be in the right place at the right time. Like Fijians having good wingers is just such a stereotype, but he's been phenomenal. Habosi on the other wing maybe didn't get as much space as he would have liked last week, but Fiji's backs were a little bit more limited against France than what they've been against the kind of Pacific Nations Cup opponents. And then a change at fullback sees Droasese come up from the bench. Banks, Togitama is there, so there's no Ikanaveri in the squad this week. Korodua and Tawaki, the prop replacements. Mayana Vanua is the lock replacement. Miramira is there. Kurivoli is your number 9 replacement. Tititella comes in. It'll be interesting to see how much time he gets if Caleb Muntz goes off. And then Rovovo, who's a pretty dynamic ball carrier, good at busting tackles, remains there on the bench too. So yeah, 2 pretty strong looking lineups, man. Not sure if either is quite at full strength, with a few guys missing out due to injuries and suspension, like I said, but still both pretty good looking. Stats-wise, the English try-scoring thing has been highlighted by many, and it's for a reason. Their try-scoring numbers have been pretty poor. I think they've scored 2 tries in their last 3 games, which is not phenomenal. England are the only side this year, as far as I'm aware, of all the sides that I'm keeping stats on, that are scoring more tries through their forwards than their backs. everyone scores more. Like some squads, it's like 60% backs, 40% forwards, which is like what Fiji is at, actually. Fiji would be the stereotype of a side which only scores through the backs. Now, they've been a pretty even mix, slightly leaning towards the backs, but England kind of bucked that trend. So yeah, they've got some bloody good backs, man. We would like to see them get into a little bit of space, maybe a bit more contestable kicking instead of the seemingly just purely kicking for territory, but we'll see. They are kicking more than anybody else. I just think the accuracy's been lacking a little bit, but maybe with Alex Mitchell there, we'll see a little bit more kind of action from England. We'll see a lot of turnovers conceded as well, 15 plus on average for England this year, which is just a little bit too high. That's around about the same as Italy, and that's just lower than Japan, who have been genuinely pretty bad this year. So yeah, not great numbers for England in some of those kind of fundamental areas. Although, speaking of fundamentals, the line-out's been good. Like, that's a key area that they've been getting genuinely pretty right, which is like, almost 90%, which is pretty bloody solid, which is not all we can say for Fiji. Fiji's line-out's been closer to 80%, which is not awful, but they would certainly like it to be above 85. They've been cutting teams up in the Pacific Nations Cup. I didn't mean that to rhyme, but it did. They've been getting just clean breaks for days, but they only managed one against kind of a stingier defence in France. So how they go against England, who are certainly below France, but at least in world rankings above, Japan, Tonga and Samoa, will be kind of an interesting test for Fiji ahead of their World Cup pool, where they've got teams like Australia and Wales to play, who are kind of seemingly there or thereabouts with England at the moment. So yeah, how much the Fijian attack can click and get those kind of X-factor moments will be very, very interesting to see. Fiji, a lot less kicking, not surprisingly, a lot more running. That's just part of their game. There's no real surprises there. But as I said, their tries are not just coming through the backs. They've been getting loads of tries and pick and goes and mauls and whatnot. So they've certainly got more than just a one-dimensional game, which is really, really pleasing to see. I mentioned the recent history. The average score is 44-15 across the last 5 games, but going back to 91, that doesn't make a heck of a lot of influence on this one. The last time they played, as I said, 2016, 58-15. That was at Twickenham, so pretty big hiding. But you get the feeling this week's probably going to be a bit closer than that. That being said, the bookies are still picking England to be pretty comfortable favourites. 13 points. The bookies have got England winning this one by 12 points, says the Rugby Forecast algorithm. So England predicted to be a try and a bit to the good compared to the Fijian guys. It is on at Twickenham. 3:15 local kickoff, which makes it 2:15 for those of us here in New Zealand. Yako Paper is the ref. I'll be getting up to watch this one. I'll be crawling out of bed. Should be a pretty interesting one. I'm very, very curious to see how this one goes. If you're a Wales fan or if you're an Australian fan, I feel like you probably need to be watching this one with a great deal of interest from how the Fijians go. And then likewise, if you're a Japan fan or an Argentina fan, you'll be very curious to see how England go. I mean, Georgian fans as well will be certainly watching with a lot of interest. So yeah, very, very interesting game in the scheme of the World Cup. If you're an England fan looking for England Rugby gear, England Rugby Store is the place to get it. I'll put a link down in the description to England Rugby Store. I don't think they're having any sales on at the moment because it's pre-World Cup. But if you want to hold fire for a few weeks, I'm sure there will be a sale coming up once the World Cup gets underway. So if you want to do 2 cents a favour, use that link in the description. And that would help me out immensely. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. How do you reckon Fiji is going to go up against England? Do you think there's a big upset, first ever Fijian win over England coming? Or do you think England are going to finally get into their groove with key changes in certain positions? But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.